This is part two for today for Wednesday, October 20th, 2013. Welcome everyone to Global Government News. I'm Darko. My website is ggnonline.net, and I'm ready to go here. I'm going to cover all kinds of different news. The economy, eugenics, related to the economy, using the economy to carry out type of, I don't want to say population reduction, but it's a form of kind of euthanasia. Economic euthanasia, I guess you'd call it. The British workforce is in a demoralized state, says a survey. It says according to technology firm Kronos, a majority, 61% of employees feel neutral or unhappy about going to work, showing that the UK workers lack motivation and job satisfaction. Only 1 in 4, 26% of employees, were very satisfied with their work. Research revealed that the biggest cause of workplace unhappiness are low pay, 36%. That's a transfer of energy. That's you putting something out and getting something back. That's going to benefit society. Well, you can see with the wealth income gap that's widened so much in Russia and in the United States, and I would imagine Europe too, pretty much all around the world. That just goes to show you there's a lot of vampirism going on as far as people's energy through the money system. Like I said in the last video, I ended up with saying money is used as a means of control, but it's also a use of transferring your energy, which is funny because people actually are fascinated and they put it in the media. They're obsessed with zombies, which is basically people not thinking for themselves, being brainwashed by the media and entertainment and all that, but also taking pride or some kind of satisfaction in being sucked dry in the workforce. Little or no variety to the job. Employees perform 25% and unpaid overtime 22%. You hear that a lot nowadays, where people aren't getting paid for overtime. For ensuring survival in challenging economic times, employers are always forced to make tough decisions. However, these challenge also remain as part of that dress code. After they've sucked a bunch of people dry, a whole generation of mostly baby boomers with their savings and all that, you got a bunch of desperate workers. You also have workers that are willing to keep working because they don't have their savings anymore. They're going to have to keep working to 75 or whatever. Women 95 years old retires from Target after 45 years. Social Security going up only 1.5%, the smallest increase since automatic adjustments were adopted in 1975 because inflation was getting crazy. It took the dollar off the gold standard, and there's many other different reasons to it, but I think you know where I'm going. New college graduates will retire after 70 years old. So, this is a good time for people like Warren Buffett to take advantage of that situation, that environment, by gobbling things up very on the cheap. The whole government shutdown was a great thing for the powers that be because they bought a lot of crap up on the cheap. But it makes for a labor force that's very desperate, and that makes them very easily exploitable. Like I said, can you imagine if people actually went in to like an interview for an employer and said, well, and the employer was like, well, what can I do to get you in this job today? I got this, benefits, this much pay, and they're not going to pay you over there that much. And in other words, instead of how it is now, where you got all these people coming out of college, and most of them have to go to the banks to acquire that knowledge, go there, and they're sitting in the interview, and they're trying to sell themselves to these employers, and these employers look at them as like, we're going to get the best we can for the cheapest amount, right? Because it's all about profits. And just imagine if the employer was actually trying to be like, well, we're going to give you this, we're going to give you that, we're going to give you that. Because there were so few workers in the labor force for them to acquire. But the reality is it's not like that, and it's not like that on purpose. That's why they make knowledge and skills and stuff like that kind of hard to attain. Most people, the only thing they have to rent out is their time and their energy, unskilled labor. Of course, most of the people that come from well-to-do families at the top, they're kind of born into it to where, they're going to get those skills to survive. They're not going to be exploited, and they're going to be able to. They're not going to have to go through what most people do, which is try to climb climb the corporate ladder. You know, they call it. I think call it social or economic mobility, which is a bunch of crap. So this one woman who's 95 years old, retiring from Target after almost 50 years of service, she says that she'll miss the customers. She says, Target has enriched my life. I'm welcome here, and that means everything. She says, you got to enjoy what you're doing and put your heart into it. Unlike these, 26% of employees that are very satisfied with their work. Her philosophy is, if you don't use it, you lose it. So, that's good. That's she's got some good advice. Some actual knowledge to pass down. I'll miss the public. I'm a people person, so she wants to socialize. She doesn't want to be thrown into a nursing home where she'll be drugged up, starved to death slowly, and drooling on herself. Right? Of course, Target will be there to take advantage of that. It's just too bad that we don't have a different type of society. Where we don't just leave each other out to hang. It's every man for himself, because then you could have like these community gardens or, just whatever. There's all kinds of different things that people can do when they, if they weren't exploited, they'd have money to shore up and they can create a community garden where they actually do make, whatever. They do get compensated for their time and their products and services, but they're doing something that they love and that they enjoy. The key is that they're still doing something. Gardening benefits elderly people to live longer. The study was carried out in Stockholm, Sweden. It says that it reduced the risk of heart and stroke by 27% and death from any cause by 30%. And I just want to point this out and I'll move on here. You have to remember, you're in this type of society where you're treated as an economic, usually asset or a liability. Obviously, when you get older and you're about ready to collect, you're a liability. When you're young and you're desperate and to a certain extent, you kind of dumb, young and dumb, you're ready to be exploited. You're an asset. So it makes sense that they would throw you away into a elderly home when they're done using you. The study found that people who were more active on a daily basis had a lowest risk of heart attack, but those who were merely active without exercising still had a lower risk than those doing nothing. It said the message of the study was simple: don't sit down for long periods, get up on your feet and do something you enjoy that involves moving around. Interesting here as far as health news goes, keeping blood sugar low may protect memory. There's a growing body of evidence linking elevated blood sugar to memory problems. It's possible that blood vessels effects can damage memory. Elevated blood sugar levels damage small and large vessels in the brain, leading to decreased blood and nutrient flow to the brain. It says that it basically affects brain areas like the hippocampus and a structure particularly relevant for memory. So, big shocker, doctors are motivated by profit. They treat patients as ATMs. Here you go, doctors make needless tests out of fear of being sued for not doing them. It's all about liability, right? That's a big thing about hospitals, liability. Everything in our society is about liability, which a lot of things that don't make sense, that's the reason. It goes back to that. The vast majority of healthcare costs occur in the final last year or so of someone's life. It says politicians who want to do something sensible about this issue get accused of rationing healthcare. Doctors not only have a financial incentive to prolong life needlessly, they also worry about not prolonging life out of fear of being sued by family members. Which is why you hear, I don't want to say it's horror stories, but I do think it's kind of messed up when I take it that far, but that's the way it is, man. You submit to a hospital like the Amish. Now they're saying, we have to give your Amish kid, chemotherapy and all that stuff. They're forcing their child. The courts ruled that now. And they're like, no, we don't want it. The kid doesn't want it anymore, the treatment. Detaining patients against wishes carries legal risk. A column analyzing the impact of recent court decisions. So, it's detaining people. Detaining is a form of false imprisonment, and that's what they do. And they rack up the bills, kind of like mechanics. CVS, more than 2 million Americans being dropped from their health insurance plans. They say it's just a tip of the iceberg. They said insurance companies have no choice because of Obamacare forcing them to drop many of the plans that don't meet the law's 10 minimum standards. What we're seeing now is the reality coming into play. And remember, I covered these articles recently about organ harvesting and selling of organs for money, exploiting poor people again. It says study, remember this, we just covered on the 25th. Study says pay people $10,000 to donate kidneys. It would save money, ease the waiting list, says researchers. 27th, the Bangladesh poor selling organs to pay debts. It says here they resorted to selling organs to pay back microcredit loans that were meant to lift them out of poverty. Remember this from last month, a new thing, organs donated from assisted suicide patients. So, patients with unbearable suffering donate their organs after voluntary euthanasia. Like I said before, I wouldn't really be against this. I'd be for it, but I know where it's going. It says here only 35% support Quebec's aid in dying bill. They're confused about what the bill actually means, and once they do understand what it means, they eventually are not for it. When the poll participants were informed that the Bill 52 is based on a Belgian law and that studies revealed that 1/3 of Belgian patients given a lethal injection were killed without consent, 83% of the respondents expressed concern that this might happen in Quebec. Yeah, so just imagine that a third of people didn't even give their consent, but that was, that's voluntary, right? You get thrown into you're a dissent, right? Dissenter. You're being monitored by the EU because you're intolerant. You get thrown in to a similar home like the old people. When they're done with them, they drug you up, you're drooling, and they say, hey, this guy volunteered to euthanize himself and give up his organs. All right, yay, we got a volunteer. Hey, guys. We're talking about prolonging life, making a lot of money off people. Head trauma treatment advances mean less available organs for transplants. Successes in preventing and treating head trauma over the past decade has had the unfortunate consequence of fewer organs being available for transplant. Eventually, they're just going to try to create them in labs. They've already successfully done it, I think, with at least one or two, maybe a kidney or something. But and then, of course, cryo-freezing them. That's the future. It says there's no need to be tolerant to the intolerant, according to the European Framework National Statute for the Promotion of Tolerance. So all 28 EU member states want to establish a special administrative unit to monitor any individual group expressing views that self-appointed guardians of the European multiculturalism deem to be intolerant. Most people used to, build their own homes. Now they don't have time because they have to work. So they work so they can have money to pay for their huge mortgages. Of course, the bigger is the better, right? Well, not really. It's good for the banks, but, they're getting ridiculous now by telling people they should be living in tiny homes. Millennials, retirees, bucking mortgages, which is great and everything. But they're still not made by the people. They're made by strangers, prefab, right? Prefab, 100 square, prefab, nomad, microhome. Could you live in something this small? So the thing here is about families. Well, let's see, does our society function around the family? Well, no, not anymore. So then this would work. And now there's 3D printing houses, 2,500 square foot house in 20 hours. So misery usually likes company, right? America's least favorite neighbors are renters. Why? Well, because they're not paying huge mortgages. They'd rather have people that didn't speak the same language, didn't have the same family structure, or the same race before they would choose a renter. So it might be disheartening news for the large proportion of renters who can't actually afford to buy a home. It said renters are less likely to adapt to local customs concerning noise, trash, parking, lawn, and upkeep. That's interesting because I've just swept up some glass on the road leaving my apartment. I've actually worked on my own apartment, on the floor and stuff, so tore up the carpet and that myself. To a certain extent, they're right with noise, with dogs barking. But these are the same people that will sit there and cite you and report you and stuff for not having your lawn cut short enough. But I think neighborhoods are just like families. Neighborhoods aren't really community-oriented anymore. They like to act like they do, but most of the things that they do are usually sponsored by some kind of corporation or sanctioned by the city instead of doing it voluntary. Kind of like families. I think families they're usually just roommates. Think about it. If you love someone very much, you want to be with them all the time. I mean, yeah, you have your separation time, but you want to be with them most of the time. But isn't it funny how parents want to get away from their children, vice versa? Just like coworkers can only stand each other for so long. And if your house is a prison, your family are your cellmates. which makes your neighbor your cell block neighbor.